I've played a lot of city builders over the years, and most of them ask you to do roughly the same thing: build one city, expand it, optimize it, and keep it alive for as long as possible. So, why is it that Against a Storm is at its best when it asks you to do the exact opposite? What is it that makes this game so compelling when directly after you have reached the successful benchmark of your city, the game asks you to abandon it and move on to the next city? Hopefully, today we'll be able to answer that question for you and help you decide whether or not Against a Storm is a game worth playing for you. To get started, Against a Storm is a mashup of city or colony builder mixed with roguelike elements. Each city is a temporary challenge, not a permanent home. You have an overworld map in which you are placing new cities down and developing them to a metric of success that is defined by your reputation, which is earned through completing orders, making your villagers happy, and completing glade events in specific ways, which we'll get into a little bit more later. And the main goal is to reach across the world map to get to these seals that you need to complete cities next to in order to earn even larger upgrades and give you more time to move across the map. Because time is not infinite in the city and in the world map either. On the world map, you have a certain amount of years available to you to make it as far to the edge of the map as possible and unlock as many seals as you can before the storm arrives and destroys all the colonies on the map and has you restarting from scratch once again. However, after each city, you are earning materials that you can use to purchase permanent upgrades towards your new cities after that. These upgrades will help make these cities a little bit more efficient, providing you with incremental upgrades to the queen's impatience, your villager speed or productivity, but also providing you with essential blueprints, which essentially allows you to build these buildings without requiring to earn a blueprint for that particular city during that run. Meaning you can spend those blueprints on different buildings that can help you in that particular city. Beside all this, you also have an account level or a viceroy level, which further unlocks more mechanics for the game that you don't actually spend your hard earned resources on. Just by playing the game and completing cities and specific missions that are called deeds, you will unlock more progression in the form of new species that will join your future settlements, new blueprints for your future settlements to unlock, new cornerstones, and new game mechanics as a whole, such as trade routes and consumption control. The cool thing about all of these progression and upgrade mechanics is that they don't all work towards making the game easier. In fact, some of these unlocks you get will serve to make the game a little bit more complicated because they introduce new features that you need to work around. Species is a great example because each type of villager has their own set of requirements. They have their own food that they want to eat, their own goods that they want to receive, and their own services that they want to have available. So when you unlock a new species, it doesn't make the next run easier. It gives you a new mechanic that you have to try to figure out and build around. And one thing that I really want to highlight and focus on in this video is just how, dare I say, genius all of these different elements come together in Against the Storm. You've got a great blend of progression mechanics in a roguelike game where every run results in not only giving you materials to purchase certain types of upgrades that will make future runs easier, but also earning account level experience that results in further unlocks that some will make the game a little bit easier, but some will introduce new complications and whole new mechanics to try to figure out in your future settlements. But none of this would really matter all that much if every settlement felt the same. The way I see it, there are two primary pillars of each new settlement that will define how this particular run will go. And that comes down to the biome that you have decided to build your city on and the species that have decided to come with you for that particular city. By the way, just as a quick aside here, I recognize that I am alternating between calling them cities or colonies or settlements, and you're just going to have to bear with me for that. The game is classified as a city builder. I think they are more like colonies or settlements, so just understand they all kind of intertwine and mean the same thing. Anyway, each different biome provides you with a different set of resources. And even the trees that you cut down will produce different materials alongside the wood that you get from cutting down the trees based on whatever biome you chose. So, your usual economic plan or build order is not going to work on every biome because you're not always going to have insects available, or you won't always have meat available, or whatever resource. You have to adapt to the specific biome that you have decided to settle on. And you also don't have a choice in which species are going to come with you for the new colony. So if you've come up with the perfect plan to make biscuits because biscuits work well with humans and beavers, well, you might get a settlement that comprises of foxes, lizards, and harpies. And if memory serves right, I don't think either of them like biscuits. So you need to come up with a new plan to appease them. And it gets more complicated when they all kind of mingle together in different random combinations. So you are not always building the same buildings every time. And on top of that, you don't even have access to all the blueprints for every building you want to build at the beginning of each run either. You'll have a basic set of blueprints plus any essential blueprints you might have unlocked that I talked about earlier. But generally, at the beginning of each run, you're going to be given a choice between 3 to 4 blueprints that you can unlock and use them to develop your colony further. But you don't know what's going to show up among those options, and you have to make smart decisions whether to re-roll and spend your amber early if you even have it, or just kind of settle with whatever option seems like the best in case there's nothing that immediately stands out to you. There are even situations where I've been given a list of blueprints that I didn't like. I really wish I could re-roll it, but I didn't have the amber necessary, so I just let the blueprint sit there until I did have enough amber to re-roll it and hope for something that I actually need. It really becomes part of the strategy for that particular colony, choosing which blueprints to unlock early and recognizing whether you are getting exactly what you want or if you are settling for some suboptimal options, because that will dictate how difficult it is to achieve victory with this particular settlement if you find yourself settling very often for suboptimal blueprints. Another interesting thing about the blueprints is that there's a vast majority of them, and they all kind of work together in what seems like sometimes random ways. There are some blueprints that specialize in building materials, and you can make, maybe planks and bricks out of them. There's others that focus on food. So, a cookhouse, for example, might make 3 different types of food, and you might even need all 3 types of those food for that particular settlement. But then they even mix and match a little bit. You'll get some blueprints that will be able to make planks, let's say, as an example, but then also a specific kind of food as well. So it creates these decision points where you're like, okay, well, I know I need to be able to make planks, but this blueprint makes planks at a 1 star efficiency, but it also gives me the option to make this type of food that I also need. Whereas there's this additional blueprint in the same list to choose from that makes planks at a 3 star efficiency, but does not offer that same food option. So which one do I choose? So the choice becomes efficiency versus flexibility. And just really quick on efficiency, what I'm talking about there is if you have a building that gives you planks at a 3 star efficiency, it means you have to put less raw material into that building to produce the same amount of planks. And it really is something that you want to strive for if you're able to, but you're not always able to. And that's kind of where the strategic decisions come from when you're looking at all the different blueprints that are available. Efficiency is really good for food, as an example, because all the food you're gathering from around the map, if you're making food at a higher efficiency, it means you're putting less food in and generating more food, which is really important. So that's just something to keep in mind. There are also cornerstones, which are unlocked at different time intervals throughout the development of your settlement. And these can really push your strategy in different directions depending on what options look appealing to you. Some choices are very obvious and will give you very clear upgrades to your current settlement, and others will tempt you to change direction. Some of them are also just kind of odd, and there might be specific use cases for them, but a lot of times I just skip over them because I don't really see the value in them. So, this is another aspect of each specific settlement that gives you random choices throughout the development of it that can push you in different directions and make every settlement feel a little bit different. Finally, we have the orders, which I think a lot of new players will latch on to as a way to achieve early victories because they're the most straightforward, but they're also presented to you in random fashion. So each new settlement is going to provide you with a different list of orders that you need to complete for some easier obtainable reputation points, which then lead to new blueprints and eventually lead you to victory. These orders will range from different things like make sure all your beavers are happy, or produce a certain amount of packs of building materials, or open up this many glades, or however many different options that are available. And when they're presented to you, also in different time intervals, they will direct you on which way you are looking to go so you can get those easy reputation points early on. I mentioned glades as well, and each colony is going to have a different set of glades around you. And when you open them up, you're presented with different, what they call glade events, in order to either obtain new materials or food, or to gain some reputation as well, depending on how you want to solve that particular glade event. Each one usually gives you two different options. Usually, one option is based around looting that particular glade event and obtaining a bunch of resources, which maybe you need, and the other one might provide you with some amber, which is this game's form of currency, or even extra reputation points. The way a lot of my colonies end up going is in the early game when I open up these glades, I'm looking to get those raw materials, or sometimes even complex materials, because they will really help me in a pinch at the beginning of that settlement and help me get into a stronger position and allow me to shoot for victory later. Whereas later in the game, when I already kind of have everything I need, I find myself shooting to complete these glade events in a way that results in more reputation and help me just get to the end so I can just win. Finally, there's also trade, which is a little less random per se. When you build that trading post in your colony, you will then have access to traders who will come into your colony again at different time intervals. There are a number of different traders that will offer you different types of resources. Some of them focus on food, some of them focus on building materials, and some of them are even a little bit more random than that. But if you've been earning amber either through these glade events or through trade routes, which also unlocks to you pretty early in the game, then you use this extra amber that you obtain to fill in the gaps. You know, if you're really missing meat, but you need to make jerky for your harpies, then maybe you can just buy a bunch of meat and use that to make that jerky, and your harpies will be happy until you find a more permanent solution, or maybe you don't even find a permanent solution and you're just constantly buying meat from traders as they come. I really like the way that trade helps you fill in the gaps of what's missing from your current colony. And if you really focus on trade routes early on, you can end up stockpiling a whole bunch of amber, which can be used to purchase those missing materials, or can be even used to purchase tools and different things that will help you complete glade events in ways that result in reputation gain and push you over the edge to get that victory. I wouldn't call that an exhaustive list of all the different factors that pitch in to make each colony feel different or feel like its own colony. There may be other factors that I missed, but the general gist is that with all of these different elements working together, combined on top of all the roguelike elements I mentioned before, really make this game come together to feel like just a perfect blend of roguelike elements mixed with really fun and interesting colony building aspects to just make a really fantastic game overall. And I haven't even touched on the atmosphere of Against the Storm. You know, there's other aspects of this game that are worth shouting out. Like, first of all, the music is incredible, and each biome has its own little twist on the music. It's incredibly relaxing and really sets the tone to get you into a new colony. I love watching my little villagers move around. They're all doing their jobs as they should. There's no weird randomness going on there. Everyone is moving to a specific location for a reason, and it's fun to watch them do their thing. It's fun to watch them chop down trees and open up the space and then have room to build new buildings and new homes and things like that. I haven't even talked about the storm, which is in the name of the game and impacts the game in different ways. I did talk about the storm on the overworld map, which resets the entire cycle and has you needing to start over from scratch. But in each colony, there is a cycle of storms as well. You go through a couple different phases: the drizzle phase, the clearance phase, and then the storm phase. And the storm phase can result in negative resolve for your villagers and make different things around the map harder to achieve. And the closer you get to of the seal that you're aiming for as well, sometimes those storms will have even more negative effects that you have to fight through and make things a little bit more difficult. Also, the music and kind of tension tends to grow during these storm sections, and then when the storm is over, you get a nice little sound chime and the music chills out, your villagers' resolve goes up, and it feels great. It's awesome. I also want to talk about how you develop as a player the more you play the game. When you're first starting out, if you're anything like me, you're probably mostly focusing on just orders and maybe a few glade events here or there. But as you understand how these different buildings work together and how your different villager species work together and what they need, you'll start to get a better sense of what you need to build and move through the game a little bit more smoothly. You'll have faster runs and more success the more you actually learn in your head about the game, on top of the different upgrades that you obtain as well. I want to again highlight the fact that the decision making, at least as far as I've made it into the game, remains meaningful throughout. Even with these extra upgrades and the extra knowledge you obtain, you are still going to be given situations in which you sit there and think for a couple minutes to decide what is the best choice, whether it's blueprints, cornerstones, or even where you want to place your buildings. All of this stuff remains meaningful. And because it's a new colony each time, you're starting from scratch each time, it just helps to keep that kind of feeling going. I really don't have a lot to complain about when it comes to Against the Storm. There are a couple little nitpicks, like, for example, I think the runs can be a little bit long, especially as you increase the difficulty. I have found a perfect place of difficulty in the Pioneer difficulty setting, but even sometimes those runs can go up to 2 hours or a little bit longer, and that's a little bit long. There's also no obvious finish line. It seems like the game is designed to just go on and on forever. Maybe something happens later in the game when I haven't got to yet, but it just kind of feels like it's built to just go on forever. Some people will complain a little bit about the randomness, especially when it comes to the blueprints. I have found that when you use amber and trade routes as well as re-rolling, you can usually get what you need eventually, but it can sometimes feel like the game is just refusing to give you what you need to achieve success. And then finally, some people will not like the idea of starting a new settlement every couple hours. The whole appeal of city builders and colony builders is to build one city or one colony and have it grow and grow and grow, and you put all your focus into that one city. This game is obviously not like that, so if that's not your jam, then that's just something to keep in mind. As for me, though, Against the Storm will be that game that will always be there for me when I want to spend a couple hours on a colony and then come back to it later and keep pushing through the meta progression, but not feel like I have to commit to one civilization or one city for the gigantic long haul. I really like that about this game. And that is my video on Against the Storm. I hope I did it justice. It's not necessarily like a hidden gem. It has tons of overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam, so I think this game has found its audience, but I don't see it talked about much on YouTube, and I was really looking forward to making a video about this game, so I hope you liked it. If you're still here at this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button if you want to see more in the future, and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.